Man, I love making these videos. Anyways, useless disclaimer before we start, and I kinda got 3 things to say. First of all, I hate disclaimers, and I'd rather die than make one. Second, no, I'm not mad, this is not a rant video, but rather a discussion video. Not even actually, this is just my observations. And last, smash the like and subscribe button. Thank you so much, you're the best. Alright, so over the years of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And also making videos, I've witnessed all kinds of Yu-Gi-Oh! Player mindset and behaviors. There is obviously way too many for me to cover in this video, so I won't really go over like an exhaustive list or something. As a matter of fact, there are some topics I will purposely leave out of this video for certain people's sake. But there is one thing in particular I've been noticing as of lately especially. So for context, we are in what you may call a tier 0 format. The tier 0 status is especially shared between two decks, which are pure Snake Eyes and Far King Snake Eyes, or I guess all the Far decks in general. Now this is where it gets interesting. We knew for a fact from months ago that these decks would become like the best decks by a long shot, so it's not like we can really say it's a surprise. We have that knowledge especially thanks to the OCG, because if it weren't for them, this TCG format would have been way less predictable and much more up in the air. So again, I need to put emphasis on the fact that these outcomes that we're seeing right now, everybody winning YCSs with pure Snake Eyes, everybody doing so well with the same deck, all of that was just super predictable since day one. You can also thank Yu-Gi YouTubers for shedding light on these decks, but you can't really blame them for doing so, because if it weren't for them, someone else would have done it anyways, and also results speak for themselves. So what I'm trying to say is, it's never a Yu-Gi YouTuber's fault for a deck being super popular, because that deck would end up being popular regardless. I mean, this is especially relevant if the deck in question is the best deck or one of the best decks, because people would eventually find out about it. But let's face it, most Yu-Gi-Oh! Players don't really invest the time and effort into understanding or studying the format before it even exists, and also understanding what the best decks are all about. It's sad to say, but a lot of views and opinions that I'm seeing right now are really just the views that the Yu-Gi YouTubers have, and they're really just copying them. The difference though is that the Yu-Gi YouTubers have the full context and they can actually back up what they're saying, but the people who watch them brainlessly, they're really just consuming information without really putting much thought into it. So I'm realizing that most players who are criticizing the best decks don't really have a good idea of what those decks even are. The only thing that these players know about the deck would be that it's the best deck, and that's enough information to hate them. What I find funny though is that pure Snake Eyes was a casual fan favorite right before the YCS started, and same thing with Fire King even. I had countless casual players ask me for combo videos on both decks, and I am saying casual, not competitive players. And again, Fire King is the exact same, because people thought at first that it was a Fire King deck featuring a Snake Eye engine, but obviously it turned out to be the exact opposite. So yeah, there was no animosity towards those decks, and playing those decks wouldn't really attract the fury of the casual players. That only started when those decks started dominating every single event because of the dumbest hive mind mentality Yu-Gi-Oh! Players have. And that mentality is hate the best deck because the best deck is never skillful, it's pay to win, and it's too easy to win with it. Oh yeah, for sure actually, let's pair Jesse Cotton to like a random average player who never played Ishizu tier, for sure, yeah, 0 skill. Like, I get the feeling of resentment towards the best deck as they're a little too good sometimes. But you know, to be fair, that's also what the definition of meta stands for. Meta means most effective tactic available, not the most fun or most politically correct tactic available. To be completely fair though, you also should not be playing the best deck only because it is the best deck and you think it's gonna get you the best results. Yu-Gi-Oh! Isn't the kind of game where just spending a lot of money will necessarily increase your win rate. What will increase your win rate is having the best strategy, and that always involves putting a lot of time and effort into building your deck and also knowing how to beat other decks. One of the best strategies that people don't necessarily understand is taking a pretty good standard deck but then personalizing it to your liking. Maybe you like the best deck, but you're not really satisfied with how people play it, so you decide to bring your own twist to it. Or maybe you have a different philosophy and you don't agree with the fact that people think that a certain deck is the best deck, so you choose to play the second best deck instead. For example, in the OCG, Fire King Snake Eyes was the #1 best deck, and Pure Snake Eyes was like #2, #3, but in the TCG, Pure Snake Eyes is #1. You could also think that Fire decks are a little too risky into certain hand traps or side deck cards, and you want to choose to play Voiceless Voice instead. Or maybe you have a lot of experience at cracking boards and playing through hand traps, so you think Despia is the best deck for you. Again, honestly, the winning strategy could be almost anything at any given event, granted you put a lot of time and effort into building your deck. My issue is a lot of players are very quick to judge but very slow at understanding. And again, this is what happens when you let your thoughts and opinions be dictated completely by what other people say. It's straight up indoctrination and makes you far worse at the game, I can promise you that. And that's exactly why I'm making this video, by the way. It's because I'm noticing more and more people just repeating the exact same key points that are super popular, but they can never back up anything they're saying. And I'm pretty sure they don't even believe in what they're saying deep down. And by the way, as if what I just said was not enough, I got another fresh example as well. So very recently, I made a video about Gimmick Puppet support, and I said, you know, if this video gets 1,000 likes, I will be making a special video. Clearly, people requested that, so I decided to deliver, and I showcased 10 combos, including 5 FTKs and 5 regular combos. I explicitly and clearly stated that it is not an FTK deck, but rather a real legitimate deck that can FTK if given the ability to do so. With that knowledge in mind, you should see the deck as a whole and not just a part of it. You need to understand the in-depth mechanics of the deck, so how to play going second, how to beat hand shafts, and how to play when your hand is suboptimal. You aren't FTKing all the time because the most effective way to FTK is when you draw the field spell or your one-card starter with a bunch of extenders, which is a little unrealistic and you can't really afford to rely on that. As a matter of fact, you got a 42.71% chance to draw the field spell, which is the one way to FTK your opponent, or you got a 94.89% chance in total to draw one of your 17 one-card starters, which typically lead to 2 interruptions and a bunch of advantage that you're generating. More than 50% of the time, you need to know exactly what you're doing, and you have to have a predefined game plan because you're not going to be killing your opponent right off the bat. And this is where listening to what I say in my videos and not being stupid comes into play. Just kidding, Yu-Gi-Oh players can't read and human beings in general can't listen. Bro, I keep getting comments of people suggesting dogshit cards like Hanewata and Ghost Sister and Spooky dogshit. Again, this is not an FTK or a buzz deck, you need to see the bigger picture. Instead of that, you can just listen to what I said in the video and play cards that not only prevent the FTK, but also the actual board from being set up. Wow, no way, that's crazy, I never would have guessed. Now, deadass, 1 Bestial, 1 DD Crow, or 1 Ghost Bell and you're good. The good news is, these cards don't suck. They're also good against other decks, so they were probably already in your side deck before, unlike Hanewata and Ghost Sister. Okay, maybe you had Ghost Sister as a time card, but don't cite it only for one matchup because that is extremely stupid. Now, there's something else that I realized about Yu-Gi-Oh players out there. I've said this in the past, but I do find it hilarious how combo decks always get hated on, but everything else always gets a pass. One Kashtira was at full power with Diablosis the Mind Hacker and a Rise Art. No, it wasn't unfair. And when Labyrinth was resolving Eradicator Virus when going first and resolving it for like 6 cards sometimes, it was also completely fine. Again, those 2 decks were mid-range decks, well, kind of, so yeah, they had a good public image. But they weren't any more fair than any other deck, and their goal was still to try to kill you. I mean, that's Yu-Gi-Oh for you, to be honest. I've had some players ask me, you know, Yasin, how do you feel when you get FTK'd in order to, you know, try to convince me to stop promoting FTK decks or decks that can FTK? And I've explained this numerous times in the past. I do not care more getting FTK'd than if I were to get hand looped for 6 or, you know, someone set up a floodgate or unbreakable bird against me. Regardless of the situation, I end up losing because I couldn't play the game. That's kind of like asking you, like, would you rather die by like a blue sword or a red sword or a yellow sword or a green sword? It doesn't matter, you're dying regardless. But the thing is, some players don't necessarily all agree with this way of thinking, and they see FTK decks as completely evil and floodgates as necessary evils. Bro, stop the cap, you're full of shit. You're never gonna be happy with someone flipping a summon limit or anti-spell against you and you instantly losing to it. Stop pretending like these cards are healthy. My personal belief is that anything that shuts down a core mechanic in the game should not exist. But again, unlike a bunch of players out there, I am consistent in my beliefs, so this applies to everything. Do I condone the fact that Gimmick Puppet can FTK? I mean, not necessarily, but it's in my top 5 favorite decks. I really enjoy the deck, and again, it is not an FTK deck. It plays a lot outside of the FTK. And I say, let them be good for once in their lifetime. Some players have such a low tolerance threshold, they just want to ban the deck before it even exists, despite it being trash for 10 years straight and never seeing the light of day. Again, if the deck could FTK left and right, I would understand, but like I said for the 10th billion time, this deck barely FTKs. And even if it were an FTK deck, like consistently, I would still say, you know, let it exist for one format. I'm saying that because if we do that, then at least it stays true to its anime nature. I've watched Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, so I can promise you, the deck is designed to be an FTK deck in the anime. It's just that Quattro couldn't necessarily always achieve it because it required a lot of setup, but Disaster Leo is one heck of a card because it had a double Exodia-like effect. The card could detach a material to burn your opponent for 4k damage. 4k damage in the anime, by the way, so that's 8k damage in real life, so in other words, you die. And also, during the end phase, if you got no more materials left, you just win the duel. Yeah, just like that. Again, killing the opponent was a designed mechanic of the deck. You didn't necessarily need to go into your battle phase. The deck actually burnt as a part of the effect of the cards. Not everything in Yu-Gi-Oh! Has to be super slow and super back and forth and the way you want things to be. Hell, I remember not too long ago when Jeff Leonard won his feature match against Justin Singh using a warrior deck that turboed out Exodia. Nobody called his deck a warrior FTK deck or an FTK deck even, just Exodia. And this is where you can tell that people do in fact unfortunately lack critical thinking skills. And Exodia FTK is fine because it's Chad, but Gimmick Puppet FTK isn't. Or, you know, it's socially acceptable to like Exodia, but it's not acceptable to like Gimmick Puppet. Ah, screw that, bro. You do whatever makes you happy. Look, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a game where the goal is to win, so as long as you're not being an asshole or a cheater, just do whatever you want to do. And every deck has a weakness at the end of the day, you just gotta find it. That's a much better mindset to have than to whine about every deck that you don't like. Or even worse, something that you aren't unsure of, but I guess you are told to dislike it because of other people. You don't need social acceptance to play the game. I've said this in the past and I'll keep saying it again and again and again. Anyways, that's all I had for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Peace.